Hey guys, Christoph the Polish Geek, and welcome to the review of the newest Star Wars movie, The Mandalorian and Grogu, which some people say newest Star Wars movie in 6 years. Well, yeah, but there was a much bigger gap between The Force Awakens and Revenge of the Sith, and back when Revenge of the Sith came out in 2005, then the majority of people thought that Star Wars was forever over, movies-wise actually, while Force Awakens was a big event, so 6 years is still less, and it was only a matter of time before we were going to get a new Star Wars movie or not, so I don't see really that anything special between the age gap, but it also shows how different things now. Back in the day, Star Wars used to be an event. You'd get whole crowds of people basically waiting for this one moment. Now, who cares at this point? If I didn't have this channel, I certainly wouldn't go and even see this movie. Because the first thing I'm going to say about The Mandalorian and Grogu, this does very much feels like a kid's movie. There's plenty of completely very silly, pointless, unnecessary comedy in the style of the casino scene in The Last Jedi, actually, and the action and plenty of things does often feel like something you'd expect in a Saturday morning cartoon as opposed to a Star Wars movie. But let's first talk about the story, which is mostly a fun heist adventure with the Mandalorian and Baby Yoda, Grogu, I have to say. If you're expecting something to basically expand on the Star Wars world, Star Wars universe and all, then this is most certainly absolutely not it. And if you're expecting to basically conclude the story and have basically tie this movie up together with everything and have the Mandalorian, Ahsoka, and old-faced Grand Admiral Thrawn and all, then this is not it either, actually. Which, while to many people it might be not appealing, I personally think this was actually a smart choice because they basically made sure that this movie appeals to wider audiences and not just those who've seen the Mandalorian show. And I'll tell you first what I felt about the Mandalorian show because this is very relevant to how I feel about this movie. I was one of those people in the show. During the first 2 seasons, I was very much into The Mandalorian. I loved it. I was saying things like, oh, this is the way, Star Wars is back. Yeah, I was very much into that crowd. But then, when they fired Gina Carano, I realized that Jon Favreau and David Filoni were just yes men to Kathleen Kennedy. At least I felt so back then. At this point, it's been proven that they're fully on the train. So, it's not like, so it was actually worse than I thought, actually. And then, the book of Boba Fett came out and completely undone the ending of season 2 of The Mandalorian, and I already knew we were up for the worst. And then season 3 came out, and if you've seen my reviews of the episodes of season 3, you will see I was trying to be way more positive than most people, and I kept telling myself, this is good, only over time to realize that it just was not. And the fact that they brought Baby Yoda, Grogu, during the Book of Boba Fett, in between episodes, basically was very much basically the minute they brought back Grogu, when Grogu abandoned Luke and returned to the Mandalorian, there is no way that season 3 could have ever worked. But then over time, I gave it even more thought and realized that even season 2 was not particularly that good. I mean, I was very much in love with it when it came out and was saying how amazing it is, but ultimately, the more thought I gave it actually over time, I realized at the end of the day, it's nothing but cameo fest. And that's why I still think season 1 is better. I didn't think so when I finished season 2, but over time I realized ultimately season 1 is better because I think The Mandalorian actually worked best when it was simply a completely isolated Western Wild West style adventure of a gunslinger and the kid that he's protecting, the Mandalorian and Grogu, although back then he was known as Baby Yoda, which is still why I think that ultimately first season of The Mandalorian is the best. And then season 2 is a cameo fest that the more you give faith, the more you think about, the more you realize it seems it's much better than it actually is, but really it's nothing but pure cameo fest, nothing else. And then season 3 is when it completely outstayed its welcome and it had no chance to work ever since the Book of Boba Fett. But whatever, back to The Mandalorian and Grogu, it does, and that's actually what I like about it, it does feel in the most style of the first season, because it's now once again a very simple heist adventure with the Mandalorian and Grogu, and it is fun at times. It is kind of entertaining actually, and if you just want extra adventures with the Mandalorian and Baby Yoda, actually, then I think you might enjoy this one. But be prepared, again, there is lots of silly comedy that I just can't stand in the style of the casino scene of The Last Jedi, and in many ways, this is very much a kids movie, I think. Of all the Disney Star Wars movies, I say The Mandalorian and Grogu is probably the second best next to Rogue One. But again, that's absolutely not a high bar to clear because Disney Star Wars movies generally tend to be trash, so being second best next to Rogue One is most certainly absolutely not a high bar to clear. But what's also interesting is that they're basically on the exact opposite ends in tone, because whereas the Rogue One is one of the darkest Star Wars movies, probably the darkest actually, next to Revenge of the Sith, then The Mandalorian and Grogu is very easily the most light-hearted one, and as I've already been saying, it is very much really a kids movie, in my opinion, that will most appeal to like 10-year-olds to 12-year-olds, I think, actually. Again, there are some fun parts, and first act was probably easily my favorite part of the movie. It was, again, this basically like heist-like adventure with the Mandalorian and Grogu, but ultimately I think, should you go see this movie? Well, if you just want more The Mandalorian and Grogu, more of their like standalone side quest adventures, then I think you probably should go see this movie. If you can also handle lots of very silly casino-style humor, actually. If you want something that expands on the Star Wars lore, the world, then no, this is absolutely not for you. But then again, that's absolutely not what I wanted from it. Like, I don't trust Disney to do anything with the expanded world and lore, so that actually was good. That's not what it was, but yes. If you want an expansion of the Star Wars world and lore, avoid this. If you want a conclusion to all those adventures and then the final stand between the Mandalorian and the throne, then this is absolutely not it for you either. But if you just want more Mandalorian and Baby Yoda and more of their standalone like adventures actually, then I say you might enjoy this. Ultimately, I think that now the more I think about it, I think that this probably should be actual season 2 without all the silly humor in this movie actually, and make it slightly more matured in the style of season 1. But yeah, because I keep saying season 2 was pretty much nothing but a cameo fest. I think that The Mandalorian and Grogu maybe is what actually season 2 should be, just without all this silly humor. Ultimately, my conclusion is The Mandalorian and Grogu, again, is the second best Disney Star Wars movie next to Rogue One, but again, that's ultimately not a very high bar to clear, and I think about it, it's a little too late, and understandably, most people don't care at this point, and the only reason I went to see this movie is because of this channel, so I could review it for you all. But other than that, I guess it's a perfect example of a movie that exists, nothing else. Maybe it would work better again if this was actually season 2 actually, but I don't think anyone cares at this point. So this is my review of The Mandalorian and Grogu. And thank you all of you for checking out this review. Press the like button, please subscribe to this channel, and I will talk to you soon in another video. Talk to you soon, bye!